Hello, my dears. Good evening for those who are in Europe or in Oslo, Norway is the place where I'm connecting with you now. It's 26th of June, and this is our last interview for this summer before the holidays. And our guest for today connects with us from UK, and her name is Angie Twydall. Welcome, Angie. Thank you for accepting this invitation.
Thank you.
She uses very interesting words when she presents herself with her sanctuary. I think it's a sanctuary of the bee. I know you are a beekeeper also. And these words are priestess and healer. And I would add from my own initiative, a womb shaman also. In a very old tradition that is a pagan tradition. You said you are a pagan by belief.
I am. Yeah.
And I assisted already in one of your circles, a healing circles with the goddesses. I still remember Kuan Yin, which is one of my favorite goddesses, the goddess of compassion. And it was very powerful. So she is really a priestess and a healer. And so I would like to invite you first to, before we start with the real questions, to just introduce yourself with your own words, to tell us a little bit about who you are and what are you doing as a priestess, a healer, or a shaman. Thank you again.
Thank you. Well, I'm living my life. I'm really blessed to be able to live how I like now as a priestess in everyday life, really. And that means I live on the land. I live on a farm here on Exmoor, very close to nature. As you mentioned, I'm a beekeeper. So by that I mean I'm not a commercial beekeeper. I'm a sacred beekeeper. So I'm really into the natural beekeeping, and I teach that. And I teach basically everything I've done through my life. I've gone on to teach others. So with my womb work, I went through a whole journey of womb healing. And I now teach therapists womb healing in different forms. And I also love empowering other women. I mentor and I teach others how to mentor to one and in groups. So yeah, very, very busy life, but it's balanced, and I'm really supported by my husband Rod and 2 lovely children, and a granddaughter called Rosie, and another baby on the way right as we speak.
Congratulations then.
Yeah.
The family is growing. This is beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first question somehow came out when you touched this sacred beekeeping activity that you carry on in your place. And I think it would be interesting to know what the bees as sacred beings, because they are sacred. If I'm not wrong, they are considered to have their origin in one of the planets or constellations in the universe. I'm not sure if it's Pleiades or something like that. So they are somehow extraterrestrial material coming down on Earth and blessing us with so much life. I would like to know, and I think it's interesting for all of us to know, what these sacred bees taught you about being a woman or being a healer or a priestess.
What the bees have taught me is that they're actually a mirror of society. So how the bees live with their queen bee. Yeah. She's there to serve her whole hive, her whole community, rather than she's not queening over them. She's there in service to her hive. So I think that's a real reflective image for women stepping into their own sovereignty, stepping into their own leadership. We are here to serve others, you know, not work ourselves to death. We're here to be supported and to ask for help and support others. So there's that reflection, and the male bees in the hive are the drones, and there's really actually very little spiritually known about the drones and what they get up to. In a basic beekeeping world, they're there literally just to mate with the new queen, the new virgin queen, and then they die. And if they don't mate with the queen, then they just hang out in the hive and get fed for the summer, and then kicked out and they die over winter. But actually there is a real spiritual aspect to the masculine within the hive. They do go into other hives. They have got these huge, enormous eyes that they, I'm sure the messages that have come through is that they gain information from other hives and then bring it back to their own. So there's a lot in the hives. And what I've been doing over the last, probably 10 years is really tuning to the energetics of the bee. What are they saying about the world? And everyone knows how they've been dying out through pesticides, electromagnetism, all sorts of things affecting the way they communicate. And actually, I started, really interesting, I started writing a novel, a disaster novel, about, it was based on a bee temple in Glastonbury, and all around the world everyone was dying from a virus, a bit like the bees were dying from a virus. And what happened, reality, here and now, has overtaken my story. Things have happened in real time that I was writing about. So I haven't actually published this story, this book, because it now feels it's the wave has gone. So the bees gave me that insight, you know, that they really are here to help heal if we wake up to their messages.
Beautiful. Yes, there's so much wisdom in nature and in all the beings that are around us. We just need to learn to listen more and not to exploit everything we have and these resources.
And I think that's what the pandemic has actually done. A lot of people have had to slow down, can listen to the bees, listen to the birds, and appreciate nature maybe much more than they did before. So it really is a deep opportunity to wake up.
Yes. Yes, world is waking up, but it's taking time still, as the whole system, the whole process of healing is not an easy one. And speaking about healing, I know that, or I heard you sometimes speaking about the fact that you healed yourself from something that was an illness, or, well, a syndrome that affects a lot of women around the world. Would you feel that you want to speak a little bit about your own experience?
Sure. I mean, I had endometriosis, which is a disease of the womb, where if you're not aware of what it is, it's like little clots of blood migrate out of the womb, and every month they swell and they bleed and they cause pain. So this happened to me after I had my children when I was 32, and they wanted to completely take my womb away, have a hysterectomy, and my body was screaming no. So I didn't have it. I then went on a quest to find out why I had it, why was this happening to me, and how could I be healed. So over many years, I was in a very high pressured government job then, so it was a lot of stress. I basically retrained in the therapies that I went to. So I retrained in massage, yoga, healing, and I left the high pressure job and became a therapist. And over the years, many different things were the key, but for me, it definitely was yoga, acupuncture, Chinese herbs, and womb massage. I was really lucky to have a therapist back in Kent, that's the other side of the country, called Helen, who had her own training school. So she treated me as a client, and then I actually trained with her to become a womb healing massage therapist. And it all went on from there, really. So I'm now 50 something. I've gone through my menopause. I think I'm the third year through, and I've still got my womb, which is, in this day and age, a real achievement, because there is a lot of pressure constantly to get a diagnosis and to have a hysterectomy. And it is a very debilitating condition. You lose a lot of blood and a lot of pain. So yeah, I hope I can give other women hope that they can manage the disease and heal themselves by just listening, really listening to what their body needs, and looking back through their mother line, and looking back through any past lives if women believe in that and resonate with that. So there's so many different areas of healing, different dimensions that any disease can impact on us, and there's always an opportunity to heal from it.
Yes, I deeply agree that we need to heal by also relating with our ancestral lineage and inheritance. And actually, through my work, I started to connect more and more, not only with my own, but also with other women through the circles I organize. And there is such a powerful connection between our wombs and the wombs of the mothers, the grandmothers, great grandmothers, and so on.
Yeah.
But still, the modern medicine doesn't go this path or way because, well,
No.
there are other methods they consider more important.
There are, but I think the more women who train in these different healing modalities, and the more women who come forward and hear the positive stories and hear about the healings that do happen, then things will change. There has to be a tipping point.
Exactly. Yeah. And what about, now that we speak about the womb and the need to heal and to look into its depth and into the darkness, because the womb is darkness, is dark and humid, as they say, as the forest, the tropical forest. How this connection with the goddess came? It was something natural, something that you found through other people? It was a calling?
I think, well, I know from a very, very young age, I was fascinated with the sky and the stars, and always used to look up at the stars and the moon and feel the pull, that there was something actually different than being in my family. There was something else out there that I felt a connection to. And as I grew up, I was always one of these children, hiding underneath a willow tree and looking at insects and making mud pies. And I lived by a beach, and I was on the beach all the time as a child with my sisters, just playing and just being out in nature. But the actual knowledge, the actual realization that there was something more than a God sitting up there as a religious dogma. I was actually invited to go to a goddess conference in Glastonbury with a really good friend of mine, and being there for a whole week, experiencing different speakers, I was sitting crying. This was just nectar. It's such a healing balm that there are other women who know there is more than what we're told by the mainstream. History is his story, and we need her story. And yeah, that was my real introduction to goddess, and I just totally embraced the whole pagan beliefs and lifestyle, and did training, moved to Glastonbury, trained as a sacred sexual healer on the Priestess of Rhiannon training. And then I actually knew that my husband and I needed to move there to actually co-create a goddess healing house, a temple, a healing temple, where women therapists could work in the divine feminine flow. So when you go for a massage or a reflexology, you just turn up, fill in the form and lie down. But with goddess healing, with priestess healing, it's much more. It's creating the sacred space. It's calling to the divine, whichever the client obviously connects to as well, and using all the senses, using all the priestess skills and tools, as well as the therapy side. So I wouldn't say it's 100% unique. I'm sure there are other women out there around the world working in a similar way, but it's definitely unique for the way therapists work here in the UK.
Yes, but I also think it's important that each of us, when we step into this path of the healing arts, creates our own system of work, and this has to come from our heart, but actually be empowered from our womb, from the energy, sacred energy we store there. And it's amazing when a woman can create this original content or way of approaching the goddess universe, which is still very much a taboo. And I think that the raising of the feminine, when I speak about this time of the feminine, it's also about somehow trying to demystify all these secrets or mysteries that are around the goddess or the healing with the goddess energies.
Yes, there need to be more myths. There need to be goddess myths, goddess stories, so we can teach our children and grandchildren what we weren't taught. And the actual goddess ceremonialists for the goddess conference are writing myths. Every year we have a different theme. And this year I'm writing a theme on the frozen lands, on the North and South poles, and the myths that come through from there and what that teaches us. Yeah, so it's actually really being open to listen to what comes through, to be in a clear channel to receive the inner wisdom and the guidance. And that is womb work and heart work constantly, and being centered and clear as we can.
Yes, beautifully said. So practically this first connection you had with the goddess in that conference also brought a major transformation in your life, as you said that you had to move with your husband and probably with the whole family. And the question that came to my mind now is that what is the role or the contribution of your husband in actually creating this full version of the healer or the womb shaman that you are today? Did you felt fully supported? There were challenges?
I couldn't have done anything, or I still can't do anything that I do without having Rod, my husband, for 35 years, totally supporting me. He really is my rock and my container, my safety net, really, that does everything in the background, that gives me the freedom to flow with what I need to do. So he's very grounded, very practical, but also he's a meditator himself, so he's got his own aspects to his own spiritual life. Our belief systems come together, but they're not 100% the same, and that's good, that's healthy. He's very much more in the power of now, in the present moment, where you know, I can go off on tangents, I can go back and I can go forwards. so yeah, I'm very, very blessed to have the support, because I lose myself. You know, we talk about how we're made up of different elements, and I think my predominant element is I'm quite fiery. I'm very grounded. I'm very earth as well. But when I go into the stream of consciousness, I can go there and stay there and forget to eat. You know, forget what time of day it is. I can be up at 2 o'clock in the morning just writing or recording something. So having an anchor, just, oh, don't forget, you've got to go to sleep sometime today, is really healthy. It's really healthy.
Yeah, it's good. To have this support. It's true. Do you consider yourself in a sacred union?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I mean, Rod has been through so much together after 35 years, and we actually did our Womb and Hara awakening training together. We went through the whole 9-month online training together as a couple, the Womb Pod, and then we went on to train as teachers together. And I think that's really how the Womb Awakening and Hara Awakening work is meant to be done, is actually in couples. There's something about the transmission of energy when you're in that field of love together, that when you're in person in a group, the group can feel it. And, you know, so many people have actually said and come up to Rod, you know, thank you for being a safe man. Thank you for being enabling me to heal trauma of being with a man, or just being in the presence of a man when you're going through deep emotional releases. Just to have a man maybe touch your shoulder or your womb, and to accept that touch as a healing touch, nothing else. So that's really beautiful to witness and enable that to happen too.
Amazing. Yes, you're lucky indeed. I'm still waiting for my
Oh,
healer, or maybe he needs to heal first and then we meet.
yeah.
For some reason we didn't yet.
Yeah.
Yes, beautiful. And unfortunately, we arrived now at our last question. Time
Oh,
passes
wow.
by very quickly. And I was thinking the way we started this interview, and we are speaking about bees, and you mentioned the nectar and the sweetness of the nectar at a certain point. And I would like you to ask a more or less private question. If you don't want to answer, it's okay, but maybe you find a way to answer it anyway. Because I feel it's somehow connected with everything, and we can actually create the full circle now, returning to the bees, nectars, or honey. Do you remember, or if in your activities, in your workshops, trainings, everything that you've done with the other people and for other people, especially for women and for healing their womb, do you remember one moment, or maybe more than one, but if there was any specific, very intense moment when you actually felt this sweetness of really saying, oh, I love my job as a healer. I really
Constantly.
love it. But if there was any specific experience that you would like to share with us, something that you remember now.
I think one of the most beautiful times was or is when women come through infertility. I don't get a huge amount of clients through that. Normally I get the trauma clients, you know, with abortion, miscarriage, rape, that sort of thing. But occasionally I will get a client with infertility issues. And I can remember working with a beautiful woman who was going for IVF, and she wanted her womb to be a safe nest. She was very fearful after having many, many miscarriages and then not being able to conceive, that there was something, an energetic within her womb. And we had a womb healing session, and she was very visual. She could really describe what she sensed and felt. And we worked together. And the beautiful story at the end of that is she did go on. And she's pregnant now, actually. She's nearly
Wow,
8 months pregnant
amazing.
now. Yeah.
Amazing. So it's possible after miscarriages and fertility, it's possible going through the process of healing and be able to conceive.
Anything is possible. I mean, obviously you have to have a diagnosis from the medical side as to why they think why you can't, and work with that as well. But I think the energetics get forgotten a lot, and that's how working shamanically on the body with the womb, with the woman being guided into the womb, is a very unique way of working, because it's not all about me telling her to do things, it's what her body is sharing and telling. So it takes a certain type of client to be able to walk with that and work with the different worlds of feeling, seeing, sensing, and looking into those dark places as well.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, it's all magical. I'm blown away all the time of the beauty of the work. Yeah.
This is true. Well, I would continue to ask you questions because I feel that you have so many things to share with us, but I have to keep up with the structure I established for the interviews, which is only 5 questions. But thank you for sharing this time with us and all your wisdom and experience. It's amazing.
Thank you.
I feel very honored that I met you, and actually I really hope to meet you in person, because I already had for 2 years this longing to come to Ireland to do a training with you for 1 week, and it was not possible. Who knows in the future, but at least maybe next year we can meet for this gathering of priestesses, if it will happen this time in Crete.
Ireland is happening. We've
Yes.
still got the venue. We've carried it over. So June 2021, And if not, as you
Okay.
say, there's a priestess convocation in Crete in
Yes.
October 2021. If
Yes.
anyone wants to get in touch with me, they're very welcome to find me on Facebook or one of my websites.
Exactly. And you run a webpage also that is Sanctuary of Sophia, where
Thank
you
you.
present your services, and you can actually, after we will upload this, I will upload the interview on YouTube and then on Facebook on in the group of women. You can actually put the link to that website. Who wants to connect with you, it will be easy this way.
Yeah,
And
and
before,
the B one is a separate one, so I must give that to
yes.
you as well.
So you have, okay, you have two now. Okay, good. It's good to use them both then.
Yeah.
Before we end this a short interview, I would like to make you a gift. This is what I do with every guest I have.
Oh,
And it's different from a guest to another. And today I was drawn for you, so your energy. You know this author, Brené Brown,
yes, I
The
do.
Gifts of Imperfection. I found out this book. I have now a lot of books I still need to read. But my eyes just, I was thinking of you, of your energy, and then suddenly I saw the book and I said, oh, this must be for her, for her. There is something here that I can read for her from Brené Brown's book. And when I opened, my eyes went to this gratitude. And then there is another part that is, what is joy? Let's see. Yeah, it's not very long, so maybe I can read both. So I will invite you to listen and I will read for you about gratitude and joy.
Thank you.
When it comes to gratitude, the word that jumped out at me throughout this research process is practice. I don't necessarily think another researcher would have been so taken aback, but as someone who thought that knowledge was more important than practice, I found these words to be a call to action. In fact, it's safe to say that reluctantly recognizing the importance of practice sparked my 2007 spiritual awakening. For years, I subscribed to the notion of an attitude of gratitude. I've since learned that an attitude is an orientation or a way of thinking, and that having an attitude doesn't always translate to a behavior. For example, it would be reasonable to say that I have a yoga attitude. The ideas and beliefs that guide my life are very in line with the ideas and beliefs that I associate with yoga. I value mindfulness, breathing, and the body-mind-spirit connection. I even have yoga outfits. But let me assure you, my yoga attitude and outfits don't mean jack if you put me on a yoga mat and ask me to stand on my head or strike a pose. As I'm sitting here writing this, I've never practiced yoga. I plan to change that between now and the time you're holding this book in your hand. But today, I've never put the attitude into action. So, where it really matters, on the mat, my yoga attitude doesn't count for much. So, what does a gratitude practice look like? The folks I interviewed talked about keeping gratitude journals, doing daily gratitude meditations or prayers, creating gratitude art, and even stopping during their stressful, busy days to actually say these words out loud: I am grateful for. When the wholehearted talk about gratitude, there are a whole bunch of verbs involved. It seems that gratitude without practice may be a little like faith without works. It's not alive. What is joy? Joy seems to me a step beyond happiness. Happiness is a sort of atmosphere you can live in sometimes when you are lucky. Joy is a light that fills you with hope and faith and love. Adela Rogers St. John's. The research has taught me that happiness and joy are different experiences. In the interviews, people would often say something like, being grateful and joyful doesn't mean that I'm happy all of the time. On many occasions, I would delve deeper into those types of statements by asking, what does it look like when you're joyful and grateful but not happy? The answers were all similar. Happiness is tied to circumstance, and joyfulness is tied to spirit and gratitude. I also learned that neither joy nor happiness is constant. No one feels happy all of the time or joyful all of the time. Both experiences come and go. Happiness is attached to external situations and events and seems to ebb and flow as those circumstances come and go. Joy seems to be constantly tethered to our hearts by spirit and gratitude. But our actual experiences of joy, these intense feelings of deep spiritual connection and pleasure, sees us in a very vulnerable way. After these differences emerged from my data, I looked around to find what other researchers had written about joy and happiness. Interestingly, the explanation that seemed to best describe my findings was from a theologian. Ann Robertson, a Methodist pastor, writer, and executive director of the Massachusetts Bible Society, explains how the Greek origins of the words happiness and joy hold important meaning for us today. She explains that the Greek word for happiness is makarios, which was used to describe the freedom of the rich from normal cares and worries, or to describe a person who received some form of good fortune, such as money or health. Robertson compares this to the Greek word for joy, which is kairo. Kairo was described by the ancient Greeks as the culmination of being and the good mood of the soul. Robertson writes, Cairo is something, the ancient Greeks tell us, that is found only in God and comes with virtue and wisdom. It isn't a beginner's virtue, it comes as the culmination. They say its opposite is not sadness, but fear. We need both happiness and joy. I think it's important to create and recognize the experiences that make us happy. In fact, I'm a big fan of Gretchen Rubin's book, The Happiness Project, and Tal Ben-Shahar's research and book, Happier. But in addition to creating happiness in our lives, I've learned that we need to cultivate the spiritual practices that lead to joyfulness, especially gratitude. In my own life, I'd like to experience more happiness, but I want to live from a place of gratitude and joy. To do this, I think we have to take a hard look at the things that get in the way of gratitude and joy, and to some degree, even happiness. So that was about gratitude and happiness from Brené Brown, The Gifts of Imperfection book.
Thank you, Brené.
Yeah, I love her. She writes very beautifully, and she speaks also very beautifully about many things that in many points relates to goddess and to healing and to our spiritual life. And actually it's very important for all of us to create a spiritual practice. Even this,
I loved the expression. I wrote it down. Good mood of the soul.
exactly.
I really like that.
And sometimes it's not easy to get to this good mood of the soul because really requires a lot of practice and discipline with ourselves. Disciplines not to get all the time into the negative patterns or to be able to recognize them and not repeat them anymore.
Mm.
And that's why we need healers as you and women and mothers as you, because you already went through this process and you can actually share it with us and teach us more about how we can do it on our own.
Yeah.
And yes.
And you don't have to do it on your own because there are women and men out there like me who can help you.
Exactly. But, you know, all the good intent has to start with the yes that we say to ourselves and to our womb and hearts, because yeah, from my experience with women in these past 4 years is that many women are scared to do this, to say yes to themselves. And it needs courage because it requires a lot of self-love to be able to say yes. And not all of us have this courage. That's why I think it's important that we show them that it's nothing to be afraid of. And when it starts, actually this process is liberating and is bringing us in a much happier state, in a much more joyful state or mood of the soul.
I think that's another whole conversation about luminary leadership, about how we step into our soul's purpose, into our soft power, into our skillful way of being in the world. Yeah, I could talk a lot about that.
I know. Maybe another time we'll do a second phase of the interview.
Come back in the autumn.
Yes. So thank you again, Angie. Very
Oh,
nice that I
so
had you with us today, and we will soon share this on different platforms, starting with my YouTube channel. So then you can also share your contacts and the interview to your network. Thank you again, and enjoy your summer. And I really hope to meet you soon in person.
I hope so
Thank you.
too. Bye bye, darling.
A kiss
Thank
from
you.
Oslo, and a big hug to all of you, and enjoy your holidays too. Bye bye.
Thank you. Blessed be. Bye bye.
Blessed be indeed.